And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
And welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world. We begin today's show in Peru, where a three-judge panel has ordered the American activist Lori Berenson back to prison to serve the remaining 5 years of her 20-year sentence. Berenson and her 15-month-old son, Salvador, had been free since May when she was released on parole. Berenson is the American activist who was arrested in 1995 in Lima, accused of collaborating with the rebel group Túpac Amaru Revolutionary Movement, or MRTA. She was initially sentenced to life in prison for treason, but 4.5 years later, due to international pressure, her sentence was vacated. She was retried by a civilian court, which reduced her sentence to 20 years. On Monday, Berenson appeared in a Peruvian courtroom and pleaded for the judges to allow her and her son to leave for the United States in order to seek medical treatment. She apologized to the people of Peru.
If my participation contributed to societal violence, I am very sorry for this. If my coming to Peru has meant more harm to the country, I am very sorry for this. And those who are affected by my words or actions, I ask their forgiveness.
Lori Berenson also told the court she does not pose a danger to anyone.
I lament the repercussions that my parole has had on society. This has always been a media case since I was detained. The truth is, despite how it hurts me, I accept that I have been ostracized. But according to the law and based on my behavior, I do not represent a danger for anyone.
For more on the story, we're joined on the telephone by Lori Berenson's mother, Rhoda Berenson, in Lima, Peru. Rhoda and her husband, Mark, run the website freelori.org. Rhoda, welcome to Democracy Now! Can you explain what has happened? Why has your daughter, Lori, and her son, Salvador, your grandson, been re-imprisoned?
Hi, Amy. There was an appeal on Lori's parole right after she was granted parole in the end of May. The state prosecutor appealed that. That's a process that's permitted. Either side can appeal. And that was what was being studied in the courtroom. There were papers that went back and forth on Monday. And there were a couple of main issues that the prosecutor had brought up, namely that Lori did not serve a full 15 years, that's 3/4 of her sentence, but it had been shorter because she had worked. If you do work-study time, you can shorten that. It's a standard procedure, and that's how everybody has done it in the past. And there was also an issue about the apartment that I'm right now sitting in, as to whether or not the police had seen the apartment prior to the decision to give us parole. The police come and check that the apartment really exists and that people aren't saying they're moving someplace that doesn't really exist. So that was what the issue was, the decision yesterday, that because the apartment hadn't been checked before the judge granted parole, that the apartment must be checked. The judge then has to say the apartment was checked, and then once again decide whether or not to give Lori parole. And that in the meantime, Lori must return to prison. So because there was a technical error, because the judge did not order the house inspected, Lori had to return to prison until this is all settled. And it's just absolutely outrageous. And actually, even while Lori was living here, the police do come and check once a month. That's a standard parole procedure. So they've been here. It was all ludicrous. I mean, there was a famous Peruvian lawyer who was last night saying it's just ludicrous to send it back to prison until you finish that up, because then they can appeal again. So they haven't really decided on on any issues other than this technicality. So I know it's probably complicated for your listeners, but there was a technicality in the original decision to give her parole, and Lori has to be imprisoned until that is resolved, which will probably take a couple of months, at which point we assume that that's going to be taken care of. The judge will once again say she's granted parole. She should then be out on parole again. But then again, this is Peru, so you never know. But that's what our assumption is. But then it may be appealed again. So this is something that only happens to Lori Berenson. We've been at this for 15 years. Hundreds of Peruvians who have been involved in political terrorism cases have...
Rhoda, we seem to have lost Rhoda Berenson, mother of Lori Berenson. Again, she has been re-imprisoned along with her son, Salvador. Rhoda Berenson speaking to us from Lima. Rhoda, did we reestablish a connection?
Yes, I'm here. Where did you lose me?
Just in the last second. Juan?
Rhoda, I'd like to ask you, you were mentioning this is Peru. As you were talking, we were showing some of the video to those of our audience that have video access or TV access to showing the frenzy of the press around this case. Could you talk about the climate in Peru ever since Lori was released?
Well, the climate has always been like that for Lori. If anything happens and her name is mentioned, but yeah, the press in Peru.
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We will go to a break, see if we can get her back on. Rhoda Berenson is who we've been talking to, mother of Lori Berenson. Lori and her son have been re-imprisoned to serve out the full 20-year sentence after she's already served 15, though her mother says this may be a technicality and she could be out sooner. This is Democracy Now! We'll be back in a minute.
Gone some places, no going back. Highway patrol choppers coming up over the ridge. Hot soup on a campfire under the bridge. Shelter line stretching around the corner. Welcome to the new world order. Families sleeping in their cars in the Southwest. No home, no job, no peace, no rest. Well, the highway's alive tonight, but nobody's kidding nobody about where it goes. I'm sitting down here in the campfire line, searching for the ghost of Tom Jones.
Ghost of Tom Joad by Bruce Springsteen. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. We're trying to have an uninterrupted conversation with Rhoda Berenson, the mother of Lori Berenson. Lori's just been re-imprisoned in Peru. Juan?
Well, yes, before we were cut off, Rhoda, I was asking you about the media reaction to Lori's release a couple of months ago.
Well, the reaction was horrendous. I mean, there's nothing Lori can do that they don't turn against her. And they're physically, when anytime either Lori, or last night was Lori and her baby were almost crushed. I mean, the baby was screaming because the police come swarming right in on you. And, of course, when that happened, the immediate reaction was, well, she shouldn't have had a baby with her. This is like, it's blame the victim kind of thing. And, of course, if she didn't have her baby with her, they would have yelled, she doesn't have her baby, she's abandoned her baby. There's nothing Lori can do that they don't twist in a negative way. I mean, nobody knows her real story. Nobody knows that she was not convicted of being a member of a terrorist group, that she was acquitted of that. Nobody knows that. They make up she can walk down the street and they call her assassin. She certainly never assassinated anybody. Nobody knows the facts. They just quote anything they like, and for the entire time she was out, there were articles every single day about Lori Berenson, Lori Berenson, Lori Berenson.
Were you afraid for her? Yes. Were you afraid for Lori and her son Salvador's safety during the period that they were out?
There were some threats. We were nervous. I really didn't expect anyone was going to physically attack either of them. And, I would say a huge majority of the population is anti-Lori. But we still managed to walk the streets and have people come up to us and say, Lori, not everybody's like that. We're on your side. So it was, yes, you're always nervous here because people
Rhoda,
recognize
can you explain what Lori was convicted of?
She was convicted of renting an apartment which was used by the MRTA. Also, at the time, she had been charged with being a member of the group and helping plan things or what it was, all that she was acquitted of. So she was found guilty of renting the apartment for her, and I think in her little speech the other day, she said she accepts responsibility for that.
Has Salvador, her son, gotten the operation that he needs?
No, that's scheduled for November, and certainly we're hoping that Lori is out on parole, and with the Peruvian public feeling so uncomfortable for whatever reasons they have with her, I just makes sense in my mind that they all say, throw her out of the country.
Does she want to come to the United States? Well, we lost Rhoda Berenson again, but we'll have to leave that for another day. Rhoda Berenson, the mother of Lori Berenson. Again, Lori Berenson and her son Salvador, 15 months old, have been put back in prison after serving 15 years. Lori faces another 5.